Welcome to Grief Road. My name is Tiffany Coffrin. I'm a clinical chaplain, and I interview people that have gone through great loss and trauma. Great is probably not the best word.
It's a pretty
upsetting loss and trauma, but big things. And I'm here with Shante Johnson, and we are talking about some things that happened in your life. And this is actually a really important anniversary.
Yeah.
Right? We are here in Draper, Utah, and your late husband was a police officer here.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got lots of things going on in the news right now about police officers and what they're experiencing, and we'll talk about that and what's happening right now. But give us a little backstory about this place where we are and what happened in your life.
So this particular corner that we're sitting in Draper, is where I've been coming since I was a child. My grandmother is from here, and so we would sit on this very corner as kids during the Draper Days parade. And then when I married my cute Derek, he became a police officer here, and he would reserve the corner here for our family and police this corner. And this actually ended up being the very corner that his life was taken.
So this is a pretty significant spot.
Yeah, it's very hallowed ground.
Yeah, as we were driving around, you were telling me the story of what had happened and how significant this whole neighborhood has been during your childhood, in your family, the different holidays that you would sit at this corner and watch the parades go by. What has kept you here? Because this is such a difficult block here, what has kept you here and what keeps it sweet for you?
What keeps me here is my family. So Derek's family is here, my family is here, my police family is here. And so that's what keeps me here. And I just decided really early on that I didn't want anything really hard to stop me from enjoying the things I once enjoyed. And so it's really important to me to really try to work through that and to not let those become roadblocks for me, because no one has the right to take it away from me. The sweet, tender moments and the places I enjoy being. And I want to be able to continue to enjoy it.
Well, and they've made, and I'll post a picture of this as well, such a beautiful tribute to Derek. On this corner, and there's beautiful rose bushes and rocks and trees, and it's a lovely place to come and think about him and really reflect on his life and how he lived his life.
Yes.
And we've talked a lot about that. It's now 7 years almost to the day of his passing. What would you like people to know about how that happened? Especially if they're looking at maybe police officers and not really understanding the magnitude of the service that they give.
You know, at the end of the day, they're the same people that we are. You know, I know it's super cliche, but they put their pants on one leg at a time. You know, they wake up and have coffee or an energy drink to get them going, and they get up and go to work the same as the rest of us. Only them going to work is protecting and serving us. And you know, people often get that confused with them getting in trouble or the police are mean, and they're not. They're just there to keep you safe and help you obey the rules so that we can all just enjoy peace and safety. And you know, they say that he paid the ultimate sacrifice, but he did. You know, he gave his life for a stranger who he thought was in trouble, and it ended up not working out well. But you know, now this entire ripple effect of people have been left behind. You know, so it is the ultimate sacrifice, and the families pay the ultimate sacrifice every day when we wake up without our normal and without our humans and our people.
I think it's really easy to look at a TV screen and say, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy, and project kind of an idea on these police officers that may not be accurate at all, lumping them all together.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the case in everything that you deal with in life. And so I think it's important to just remember, do you truly have all the facts before you're siding with something? And, you know, if you've ever been a part of a news story, you know very quickly that the entire story isn't told.
Yeah.
So, and it's the same if you're gossiping in the neighborhood just with your friends, you know, like one story gets blown out of proportion or you don't have all of the facts. And so it's no different with our police, and it's very frustrating.
There are some big differences. You indicated, you know, if you're part of a news story, there's a lot going on that you don't hear about, or that regular people on the other side of the camera don't hear about. I really want to have you share some of the differences in having a spouse who is killed in the line of duty, how that affected how you could say goodbye to him, what the days were like following him being shot. What was that like, and how is that so different? Because I know it's very different.
Yeah. So we've talked about this, and I didn't really realize how different it was until I experienced funerals after. But we really have a really big family, a big police family, and they just rally around you, and they protect you and watch over you while you're sleeping. There's somebody parked out in front of your house, protecting your home and you until your spouse is laid to rest. Just like they just show up from across the country. You know, the love and support is just incredible. Like, thousands of people are there, and it lasts, you know, a year. They honor our fallen so beautifully, and so it's a very different experience. And in them being so protective of their brother or sister, they stand honor guard over them. And so, you know, for me, as a 31-year-old, I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't get to say goodbye alone ever.
Wow. So you weren't ever alone with his body?
No.
What was that like when I know they contacted you and had you go to the hospital where you could see him, and he had already passed, and but it was a criminal investigation, right?
Yes. So they didn't know the story, like we had just mentioned earlier. You arrive on scene and you think you know what's happening, and the victims lied and said that there were other shooters out there that caused it, when they were the ones that caused it. So they did a full city lockdown, and they were looking for a shooter, and they rushed these two to the hospital because they had been involved. He pulled his weapon on his girlfriend and himself, and so I can't remember what you just asked me.
It's okay. So what had happened, Derek had rolled up on the car,
Yes.
thinking that there was maybe a problem.
Yes, because the car
it was early in the morning, and so he sees a car on the side of the road that looks like it had crashed, and sees there's people in the car, and walks up to the front window and was shot at that time.
Yeah, rolled his window down to see if he could help, if they were okay, if they needed a ride, and he ended up firing at Derek.
So there was some struggle going on when he walked up to the vehicle.
Yes.
And so there was really already some things going on in the lives of the people that were there, that wasn't steady, right? They were not well.
Yeah.
And he was in that place.
Yeah, he was in that place and doing his job to offer service, or whatever needed, and it ended up being a domestic dispute, and the guy ended up turning the gun on Derek, and then ended up turning the gun on his girlfriend, and ended badly.
So when they came and got you and brought you to the hospital, and you were able to go into that room, did you think you would see him again? Did they talk to you about what would happen over the next couple of days?
Maybe. I don't really recall, but
Yeah.
they won't give you the notification. They have a certain person that gives you the notification.
The death notification.
And the chief in this particular incident was going to be the one that gave me the news. And so I was in Park City, and so I was picked up by Summit County sheriffs and driven all the way down the mountain to the hospital.
You didn't know?
I had no idea. I knew he had been in an accident, and that I needed to go to the hospital. And Derek had been in accidents before that I had been to the hospital for.
Okay.
So I fully anticipated seeing him again. And when they told me that he hadn't made it, and we went into the room to see him, they advised all of us to not touch his body because it was an open investigation.
Wow.
And
so you see him there, but you can't touch him.
no, and he had like bags over his hands so that they could preserve evidence, and like he literally was fresh from the scene. So they put a sheet up over him because I'm sure he was pretty gnarly, but
So then you have this outpouring of concern and people in the community, but you also have the media. What was that like, being under a microscope?
it really felt very surreal. And I'm very thankful that his family was able to take on the media that week. So I was able to just stay home with Benson and try to figure out what was happening.
And how old was Benson at that time?
Benson was 6. So, you just wake up every morning and just expect it all to be a bad dream. And that also sounds cliche, but you really do.
You do.
You just, not that you've got much sleep the night before anyway, but you just wake up and you're like, okay, that was a really bad dream and now it's over. And you just keep going along. So I didn't really have to deal with that. I was very protected and shielded from that in the beginning.
So then there were plans to do this big funeral with a procession, and so you don't have time to really ingest what's happened.
No, I had no time to grieve. I had no time to say goodbye. And, I blame that a lot on our culture.
How so?
I blame that on just like, we just bury our dead so quickly.
We do.
And we don't just take time, just a little bit of time.
Yeah.
If it's been 5 days and we don't have a funeral service planned for them, like, what's going on? What?
Yeah, it seems weird. We do have kind of a
Fast.
then you do this, then you do this,
Yeah.
and we don't. There are other cultures that spend a lot of time, like a week, where you're actually with the person's body and you're able to connect and say goodbye. It's fascinating. I've watched, if you haven't watched this, go on YouTube. There are videos of elephants when they come upon another elephant in their family or their herd, where they actually all touch the bones and they feel, and you can just sense like there is a process of rolling that over and holding on and saying goodbye.
In the circle of life. Yeah.
And we're kind of too productive to do it that way.
Yeah. And like everything was beautiful. I loved the way it all went. I just wish that I had more time. I mean, I think we all wish we had more time.
Yeah.
But
even in that mourning process, if it could have been stretched out over a little bit.
a little bit more time.
Yeah. Did you sleep at all during?
I did not. No. I could hear the car running out my window, and I just worried about them, and like I lost a husband and a best friend and a father to my child, but they also lost the person that they work with all of the time. Unfortunately, we're with the people we work with more often than we are with
We're
our
like
families.
brothers and sisters.
And so I just knew that we were all really hurting, and they had to keep showing up, I got to climb in bed, and they had to keep showing up.
Can I ask, I know it's private, there's so many tender points, but I know in our family, saying goodbye, letting the kids know that their dad had passed, that was, just so hard.
Yes.
There's no right way to do that. What were you thinking of when you had to tell Benson? What were your priorities?
So I also was very blessed to, at the hospital, talk to a victim's advocate. Because after we had been at the hospital for quite some time, I realized that I still had to go home and tell my baby.
Yeah.
And I was still out of town. And so he was spending the weekend with his cousins, having a weekend. And so my in-laws were on their way home, or we were meeting with Benson. And I just said to her, what do I say? And how do I process this? And how is he going to process this? And she just told me, kind of coached me through it, let me know how he may or may not react. And that helped me a lot, because if he had clammed up and I wasn't ready for that, it would have been really upsetting. And so it was a lot easier to know what could be coming.
Yeah.
And so we just, I sat him down, just the two of us, and I just told him, Daddy went to work like he always does, and he fights bad guys, and the bad guys won today, and that Daddy wouldn't be coming back home again.
He's now 7 years older.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been able to watch him grow into this young man.
It's so crazy.
And he's been able to hear so many stories about his dad and the kind of man he was, and where he can be so proud.
He is.
It's always hard to know how our kids are going to connect with that memory. How has that come kind of full circle as you look at who Benson is today and how he connects? I know you've given him a lot of latitude, a lot of room to kind of see that for himself.
So the very first year in a line of duty death, you have an honoring ceremony of sorts, almost daily.
Wow.
5-6 days a week.
So for a whole year.
For a whole year.
People, beautiful people in the community that want to do beautiful things to honor him, but that's also hard.
It was very healing for me.
Okay.
I do know that for others it's quite a trial, but for me it was very healing. And so that very first year, unless I interfered with school, Benson went to every single one.
Right.
And I told him, this year you have to. And then after this year, it's an option. And so he'll go to like some of the really big stuff, and now he's just, and he's actually gone now that he's a young adult. And there's been 2 of them that I haven't been able to make it to that happen on a yearly. And he's gone and represented his dad.
That's beautiful.
So yeah, he's just really good.
So one of the parts of Derek's story that is so heartbreaking is that after he was shot, he did try to get away. Mm-hmm. And even with that wound, he was able to go half a mile.
I would say, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Half a mile to try to get help or try to get away from what was happening. And then his vehicle struck a tree. Mm-hmm. How have you incorporated that tree? Because there are those places that are so important to us. Mm-hmm. And obviously this Draper community is important to you.
So they ended up developing the place where he hit the tree, and the tree had to come down. So I just felt connected to it because the community did so much mourning there. And it was really important to me to let the community be a part of the mourning process, because that's what he died doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why the tree means so much to me, is because it represents a lot of things.
Yeah.
And so we cut it down and took it home.
The tree.
The tree. The part that had the wound on it.
And that's fascinating too, that the tree had that mark.
Yes, it had the mark, but what I found really fascinating was the tree got hit and had this huge flesh wound, and then the next year we went and had a memorial there, and it had started to heal. And I just
beautiful.
thought, wow, like we're all healing. And this tree is a physical representation of what, our hearts kind of look like.
Yeah.
It's this big, huge flesh wound that will always be there, but it grows layers and layers of love and thick skin. And so anyway, we took it home, and I've been trying to figure out what to do with
This
it.
huge tree.
This giant tree.
How
It's probably like 6 feet, 5, 6 feet in diameter.
So you take this tree home.
Yeah, and it's 6 feet tall, and they haul it by a tractor to my house. They all think I'm crazy. It's fine. I am kind of crazy. And it's just been kind of chilling in my yard for a minute.
Yeah.
And this year I just finally decided I didn't know what to do with it. Nothing's resonating with me. And so I just decided and said out loud, I'm going to, we'll have like a burning party maybe. We'll take a little piece of it, make something out of it, like keychains or something, and then we'll let it go.
Yeah.
And this giant yellow monarch butterfly came flying through the yard.
As you were having this discussion.
Yes, and it was the first big real butterfly I had seen all year. And I just was like really at peace knowing that it was okay to let it go. And so anyway, I was telling my son, and I was like, this is what we're gonna do. And he is a huge baseball player, and he loves baseball. And he's like, Mom, you have to reserve, and he's like, this much of it, like this big. And I'm like, what are you gonna do with that? That's as weird as me bringing a tree home. And he said he wanted to turn it into a baseball bat and just put it on display forever. So I thought that was really touching because he was so little, and we just have reminded him of all the memories, but that he's taking on his own dynamic with his dad.
Yeah. What would you tell other moms that have lost their spouse? As you've now had years to be past it, what has been helpful? You indicated that the victim's advocate kind of letting you know there's lots of ways he could feel about the news.
Yeah.
What other advice would you give to maybe a mom that has lost her husband?
I just let people in. Just let them help you. Let them be who they want to be to you. You're not a burden. Like, everyone just wants so bad to do something kind. And even if that is folding your laundry, which you may be like, nope, like, just let them fold it. Let them help. Just let people help.
They're grieving too.
They are grieving.
And I love that you talked about the tree, that was a place where people could mourn. And that was another reason why it was so important to you. All that love happened there.
Yeah, and that I just kept emulating all this energy, and I loved it. It was good.
Wow, I love this that bat, or those bats, if you do a couple, will be so priceless.
They will.
We don't always know how things are going to turn out. And in the processing, sometimes people say things that they're trying to be helpful, but aren't so helpful sometimes. How did you separate and kind of protect yourself when those things didn't land right?
I had watched a really close friend of mine lose a baby, and watching her process really helped me understand that I'd rather somebody say something to me in effort to be kind and it does not come out right, than for them to avoid me at all because they just didn't know what to say. And so I just chose an attitude of gratitude and just decided, you know, if they're going to come up and say really weird things to me, that I knew that they were coming from a place of love and they weren't trying to hurt me or offend me. And that really helped me get through.
When we have these big chunks of our heart taken from us, it would be really easy to say, I can't love anymore, because it's a huge risk. How have you kept your heart open to love today?
We're creatures of love. It's the only thing that heals us. It's the only thing that's going to heal the divide that we're feeling now. And I just refuse to close it off. And so I just wanted anyone who wanted to be a part of my life and in my life, genuinely, I wanted them in my life.
Well, again, grief is awful. It is big, it's exquisite, because we love so big, grief is so big, and God writes straight with crooked lines, and we never know where that road is going to take us, but that road is a journey, and again, keeping our hearts open and keeping that love alive is our most important journey. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.